Hello and welcome. Join us as we look at the Oxford Rifles' participation in the First World War. This video will cover some of the units where the Oxford Rifles were noticeably present and where they went during the war. The Oxford Rifles was part of the militia system in Canada. It officially became the Oxford Rifles in 1863 when it was formally reorganized as the 22nd Battalion Volunteer Militia, aka the Oxford Rifles. It is important to note that the Oxford Rifles as a unit did not fight during the war. Groups of men from the Rifles joined units as well as individual men. With the outbreak of the Great War, which lasted from 1914 to 1918, details were called out from the Oxford Rifles as guards on public works and buildings, while a large detachment of officers and men formed part of the 1st Battalion of the Canadian Expeditionary Force. Other members of the regiment later proceeded overseas with the 18th, 34th, 71st, and 168th Battalions, as well as other units. Approximately over 2,500 men from the Oxford Rifles served in CEF units and earned several battle honors during the war. Those will be discussed later in the video. Let's begin with the 1st Battalion. The first draft of men from the Oxford Rifles left Woodstock in August 1914 for Camp Valcartier in Quebec. Eventually, this contingent became part of A Company of the 1st Battalion and the 1st Brigade in the 1st Division. They first entered the trenches in February 1915 in Belgium. They were part of the 1st Division during the Second Battle of Ypres in late April 1915. This is the battle where chlorine gas was first used in the war. The battalion suffered 400 casualties out of 550. As soon as the first group left Woodstock, more recruits were signed up as fast as they could, and in September 1914, another 150 left for London, where a new unit was being established. The unit became the 18th Battalion, and the men from Woodstock, some of whom were Oxford Rifles, became part of D Company. They proceeded overseas with the 2nd Canadian Division. The 34th Battalion was formed soon after. The photo shown below was taken in Guelph in 1915. The 34th Battalion was primarily from Guelph, although there were a few Oxford Rifles in their ranks. Men came from all over southwestern and south-central Ontario to join the 71st Battalion. The 71st left Woodstock late March 1916 and went to Camp Bramshot in the UK. There they trained for 6 weeks. The training is interesting as they tried to replicate tactics used in the trenches as opposed to standard parade ground discipline. After their training was complete, the battalion left for France, where it became placed in General Reserve. There, officers and men were parceled out to replace individual casualties in frontline battalions. The 168th Battalion was raised in January 1915 and were known as Oxford's Own, as many men from Oxford County, as well as the Oxford Rifles, joined. They left Camp Borden, which is near Barrie, in late October 1916 for overseas duty. They trained for another 6 weeks in the UK before being sent as reinforcement drafts for the 4th, 12th, and 39th Reinforcement Battalion stationed in France. Many Oxford men enlisted as individuals in other units during the war. Because of the Oxford Rifles' representation in various units that participated in major engagements during the war, this gave them authority, along with the General Order No. 71 in 1930, to bear the following battle honors. This includes the Battle of the Somme in 1916, the battles of Arras, Hill 70, and Passchendaele in 1917, and Amiens, Hindenburg Line, and the Pursuit of Mons in 1918. Following the war in 1919, the numerical designation of the 22nd Infantry Regiment was taken away as it also belonged to the 22nd Battalion of the CEF, which were the famous French-Canadian Vendus. In 1920, the Oxford Rifles were reorganized with 3 companies based in Woodstock and 1 in Ingersoll. If you would like to learn more about the history of the Oxford Rifles, you can find plenty of information at the Woodstock Public Library, the Oxford County Library, the Oxford County Archives, and the Woodstock Museum. Thank you.